everyone, and welcome to our monthly panel. I'm going to be waiting a little bit for everybody to be logged in, and it's a pleasure to be here on a Saturday in the morning. Depending on where you are, it might be very early morning, like Dr. Eliana Khoury, which is extremely in the morning. But isn't it a pleasure, Dr. Eliana, to start your day with us?
Always a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So, welcome on board, everyone, and welcome. I'd like to welcome Dr. Zeina, Dr. Eliana, and Ms. Mayssa. I'd like to welcome everyone who's in attendance for their willingness to join us again on a Saturday. I know that time is money, so I really appreciate you putting the time to meet us. But after all, we are discussing something that is extremely important for all of us in the education sector at the present time. I guess from the first moment that AI started, the wave towards our classrooms and courses, because it's been there for quite some time, the first thing that came to mind and started the concerns was assessment. So before I start with the questions, I'd like to briefly introduce each of our panelists. Dr. Eliana Khoury is an associate professor at Athabasca University. She is the big gun with regards to alternative assessment. So thank you for joining. Dr. Zeina Hojeij is an associate professor at Zayed University. She is the big person when it comes to experiential learning, interdisciplinary education, and whatnot. And Ms. Mayssa is she's the look from our younger generation. You're the focus of everything that we are doing. You are the graduate students who are having to deal with all these changes. So it's my pleasure to welcome you. Thanks for being here.
Good morning.
Good morning. So I will start with Dr. Eliana. Talking about alternative assessment, because it's been a term that we've been talking about for quite some time, but with AI, focus on alternative assessment and authentic assessment and all these terms is becoming more. So can you tell us what is alternative assessment and how does it differ from what we usually consider as assessment in?
Yes, of course. Good morning, everyone. So I've been trying to define alternative assessment for quite a few years now. And one of the most important elements of alternative assessment is that it focuses on student learning. So it allows any student in any situation to demonstrate their learning. It doesn't set barriers, so it tries to remove the barriers of how to demonstrate the learning. In addition to that, the focus is equity, so it's equitable in a sense that anybody who is doing that assessment, if it doesn't work, they have choice, they have flexibility. It's also it could be interdisciplinary, so connecting multiple disciplines, taking it out of just that one course. It could also be renewable, so not only disposable assessment that is done in one course in that moment that students will forget or that students will stress about. In addition, it also has multiple forms, which is the basic. It's not only an assessment that is done by essay or by exam, multiple choice question, or even if it's a presentation. It's it could be multiple forms, so giving that choice to the students, and I will go into details later, but some of these choices could be a debate, could be a comic book, it could be a mini documentary. So any way that the student feels that they can tell me that I achieved my learning, I achieved that learning outcome. This is what makes it an alternative assessment because the focus becomes on helping that student. If you did not achieve that learning outcome, I'm going to help you get to that. And as I mentioned before, flexibility. And this is one that I really like. It's fun and engaging. We want to move away from it being stressful as a barrier for the students. We want it to be fun, we want it to be engaging. So it promotes empowerment and it promotes agency for the students. I read a quote a few weeks ago that says that students do not cheat when they are writing their diaries at home, or we don't cheat. Like I'm writing my diary, I don't go and I check ChatGPT, write my diary for me. So that's what we are looking for in our alternative assessment. We want them to be that engaged that I want to tell you how much I know about this course or about this material that I'm learning. I want it to be fun. I want to be engaged. And also the instructor, we want the teacher to not to be bored when they are assessing. So it's an approach to assessment where we put the students' learning as our focus, and we try as much as we can to get that student from a place where they might not know the material to they know the material and they can tell me they know the material. Thank you.
Thank you, Eliana. Thank you. So this is a snippet, and we'll talk about some examples, I think, as we move forward, and also with the Q&A part of this. I'm sure those who are listening and attending would be really interested in some examples of these alternative assessments. Dr. Zeina, with your expertise in the interdisciplinary and experiential learning, how are these types of approaches relevant to today's university students and high school students? Because after all, I know that we're talking mostly now today maybe on the higher education, but more importantly, higher education is the objective of our school students. So how is this more relevant, whether it is experiential or interdisciplinary?
All right. Good morning. Thank you, Dr. Eliana, for that entry to this topic, because I will pick up from there on the same ideas. Even though we're talking about higher education, but building this capacity of thinking in interdisciplinary context and of going through experiential learning starts in high school. Because as you said, as they transition into university, and then from there on they transition into the workplace, this type of assessment is essential because it mirrors actually the interconnected nature of what they see in their workplaces, the interdisciplinarity of the problems that they have to deal with on the job, whether it's when they finish, or whether when through internships, through on-site placements and projects. So as the students transition from high school to university, these types of assessments help them develop crucial skills that they need to succeed in university and at work. They help with, for example, critical thinking skills and creative problem solving skills. They help with collaboration and communication, because these are skills that are so essential to work, to like the real world. These types of assessments, as Dr. Eliana mentioned, they are independent they help the students deal with self-directed learning, and with their time management skills as well, because they have to manage their projects, they have to manage themselves and their teams. They help with the integration of knowledge across different domains. So there comes the interdisciplinarity of it, because we know that, while still at school, we may learn something still in silos. At work, it's never like this. We have to deal with so many different domains. So these types of assessments will expose the students to these skills. They will learn professional and practical skills which are valued by employers later on. So they prepare the students for the reality that most real world problems don't fit into one single discipline, or there's no one single way to solve things. And so whether in university or in their future careers, students will need to learn how to synthesize from multiple fields and how to apply skills and knowledge into certain practical contexts. And that's what they learn when we do this type of assessment, and we move away from traditional, we learn this in class, we test on it, whatever type of assessment it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Zeina. Very very informative. And now I want to see the perspective from the other side of the fence. So, Ms. Mayssa, when it comes to your experiences with whether I know jargon on our side, alternative assessment or whatnot, but as a student going through the graduate studies and earlier having gone through the undergrad, uh, what has your experience been with some, if any, different, let's make it simple, different types of assessment other than exams and quizzes or papers, regular papers?
Yeah. So, good morning, everyone. Let me start by sharing a little experience that would later on push me to tell you a bit more about this. So, I graduated from my first master's in June, and throughout this first master's, it was so typical. It was very like, let's study, let's get the exam done, and that was it. And for me, having gone through my work experience in parallel, and luckily it was in adult learning and experiential learning as a learning and development consultant, for me, it was baffling that we weren't able to consider those graduate people as full-blown adults that need different ways to learn the things that we need to learn, because those are the tools that we would need to apply later on in life. So fast forward to today and the second master's that I'm doing, and luckily it was a bit, the university is a bit more open to AI. What we're experiencing now, and it's also funny because it's a huge shift for the professors as well that have been used to something completely different for their
For
whole
sure.
lives. What we're doing now is, for example, in one class, all that we needed to do, all our grades were split into two. One for a presentation and a video that we need to share. So there's a topic, we work on a presentation the way that we want to, no outline that is given to us, just plain building your own ideas around the topic, and then sharing with others a video that we think is relevant, like a TEDx or different types of videos by professionals, just sharing it, saying why we think it's relevant, and then exploring and having conversation during class. And then the other half of the grade, which is like literally a 50%, is our engagement. So the way we ask questions is clearly very important. The things that the value that we add and how we link the dots in class is graded. So for me, it just made, after this work experience and the dissonance I felt, and where I felt like I'm not a kid anymore. I need something extra. I need you to build me for later. And I know what later requires. This felt really, really good. So we said engagement, we said videos, we said presentations, asking questions. We have an internship that we need to do, and it needs to be very specific to the education that we're getting. So I've had to do an internship where it wasn't really related to what I was doing, but we needed to get things done. While the university now is putting more effort into them finding us an internship that is very relevant. We crack cases, we discuss real life things. And then the big disclaimer at the beginning of the year was, we know you will use AI. We are not against AI. We want you to use it. We just don't want you to lose your identity while using it. So I think we'll get into this conversation a bit more later, but that's
Definitely. Mayssa, thanks a lot for your insights. It's amazing what you're bringing to the table, and I do have a few things that I want to comment on, but again, I will leave it until a little bit down the road. But it's very interesting that you have this ability to compare two graduate programs so close. And before going, I want to ask, generally speaking, from your experience with both, where do you see the students, the graduate students, making use of AI inappropriately more, in the first one or in the second one? And let's be honest, if we can, and no
Honestly,
naming.
no. It's not about naming, but although they're two different cultures, so one is in Lebanon and one is in France, I feel like it's not about this and it's not about what the university is offering. Of course, it pushes you, but it also about your responsibility as a person and your
Definitely.
understanding. So it plays a huge role if you're into the graduate program just because you need to, and it's something that you need to tick off your list to get this job,
Amazing.
or if it's something that you're looking at as a tool. I want to be a sponge. I want to take everything
Okay.
in because I know the value of this. So I think this is where the nuance is. It's not about the program itself, but rather the people.
Okay. Excellent response. Awesome. Maybe I need to rephrase the question, and maybe this is something for us all to discuss. Which approach allows for more inappropriate use of AI? Maybe that's more of the question, and we'll go through it as we move forward. Before going to the next set of questions, I'd like to take some examples from Dr. Eliana and Dr. Zeina. Can you give us some examples of the alternative assessment? And Dr. Eliana, I'm going to be a bit focused. Can you give us a couple of examples for alternative assessment within languages, if possible? Because language tends to be the one that everybody asks, oh, it's not easy for me to do something like that when it comes to how do we do this with language?
Yes, my pleasure. Today
Yes.
I had a session on using Editathon, Wikipedia Editathon as an alternative assessment. And I'm going to talk about this and other examples, but this is just fresh in my head. So the idea of, we all know what Wikipedia is, and it's a source of information, and they go through a rigorous review when you want to post something or when you want to edit something. So the idea here there's different approaches to using Wikipedia as alternative assessment, but one of them is an editathon, and this goes under renewable assessment. So this is an assessment that is done outside the classroom. It's done for the bigger community. And
Yes.
sorry, I'm gonna track back. I had a panel with a group of students, and I asked them which was the most meaningful assessment that you had, and they agreed that creating a Wikipedia page was meaningful because it was something that that was gonna stay there. And then when they finished the course and then they went to another course, they went back to that and they were engaged with it. So the basis of creating something that is out there is that it's meaningful and engaging. So the editathon, as the name implies, is an event that is set, and everybody is editing Wikipedia pages at the same time on the same topic. So that editing, when I say at the same time, I don't mean at the same minute. I mean, for example, they have a weekend to do this, or they have a week to do this, or they have a semester. So it's a set time that they go and they edit the same topic. So one of the examples, it's usually geared towards more diverse content. So today I gave the example from our perspective in a Canadian institution. If we want to talk about Canadian Indigenous point of views in environmental studies. So that would be the question. And then students who are studying environmental studies, they would go in and find pages where information from Indigenous point of view is missing, and then they would add it to that. Other point of views, for example, there's a university in the US. They chose a person, and what they did is they asked the students to go into archives because there was no information about that person online. They went to the archives, they went to Google News, they read all these newspapers, and then they collated all that information and then made sense of it and then put it out there. So there's different types of editathon. It depends on what you want. Like there's different approaches where you can agree with the students on a certain topic and then they go in. It could be in there's one approach in physics where they went and they applied all that knowledge. There's one in Spanish. They found that it was they couldn't find resources in Spanish, so they went and they translated those pages and like throughout. So that was the assessment. And I there's multiple ways to assess that. For example, like how they chose the pages to edit. What did they choose to edit? Where did they get their resources? They could just create the editing and submit it like with like two documents before and after. But also there's a dashboard on Wikipedia that the instructor can create for the course, put the students' usernames and then follow what they did and how many edits. So it's really cool. Um, and also, like, you can ask students to reflect on that at the end. Like, what did you learn? To share, like, the common mistakes that they found, how they related to the course content. So it's really out there. It teaches them to write for a broader audience.
Audience.
Yes, it teaches them about, there's a concept called information environmentalism. That's a very long word for 1 a.m. So that is like to clean up and to have responsibility for the information that is out there. And I think this in the generative AI like era, it's really important because there's a lot of stuff that is being published out there. So I spoke a lot about the editathon. I was really excited. It
Uh,
requires work, but it's exciting. Yes.
Eliana, you're
Yes.
being very, very, very sharp for 1 a.m. In the morning. So thank
Thank you.
you. On the
Coffee,
contrary,
coffee,
I
Lebanese coffee.
yeah, I really love the example that you're giving because it hits on more than one aspect. There's this misunderstanding, as you said up front, that Wikipedia is considered to be a non-reliable source, which is totally wrong because if we look out there, it's the most edited and reviewed resource that we have at the present time. That's number one. On another front, the language component, the critical thinking component, and for us in the Arab world, one of our biggest challenges and issues is the lack of quality material that's out there in Arabic, you know? And when it comes to Wikipedia pages at the present time in Arabic, you know, we have all seen it. All of us, we've seen it. What happens is it is something that most of the time is something written by the person themselves or copied from a newspaper magazine and put there, and we don't know anything about it. If only Arabic teachers will approach, especially at university level, to engage those students, if only they approach, this is a wonderful exercise. I'm calling on everybody to use it, but maybe we will talk more later on in a separate time about more guidance how this can be done, because we won't only be providing a good alternative assessment, we'll be enriching our Arabic presence out there
Yes.
in the world. Thank you, Eliana.
I'm just going to add that it's not only Arabic, it's culturally
I
relevant.
know.
Because, yes,
Yeah,
it's like, it's not only the Arabic language, we need it to be like representative of the, right, the culture.
yes,
Yes.
yes. If this is your 1 a.m., I'm like, I'm looking forward to the 1 p.m. or 10 a.m. Zaina, thank you, Eliana.
I love this idea of the edit-a-thon. I've never heard this before. I mean, it
Yeah.
gave me so many other ideas. For us, the way we use this type of assessment, I could think about, for example, the simplest example. Currently, now I'm teaching ethics, and now the current assignment that the students are working on, they had to choose a dilemma, an ethical dilemma, of their own, not going through ChatGPT. So they have to come up with a dilemma, and then they have to come up with one of the theories that we have discussed in class to solve this dilemma. Okay. But the product of this is going to be a poster and a debate, not a test, not, me coming up with the questions. So what they are going to do is have like a representative poster, and then they're going to not present their debate poster, but they're going to have a conversation about it with the rest of the group. So having this type of assessment, so they're going to be graded on basically the content, yes, but their engagement as well, how well they know the dilemma, how well they can answer questions. And then they're going to have an open debate with the rest of the class. Now, this is much more complicated in terms of steps than a regular test that we could give after a lecture, but you can believe that the students are going to remember this. You know, this is a way to ensure that this is going in there. Another example that I can think about are all the challenges that we give them where they have to, like, we can do this across multiple disciplines. Like the students who are in business would get, for example, a marketing challenge, and then they have to solve it. And sometimes they have to solve it by going into the industry or their places of on-site placements where they're doing internships, or they're doing what do we call them? They're experiential learning, because those are part of the courses. And then they have to talk to other people like real people in the industry, and then try to solve this problem, and then come back and report on it. But then everything is done in a way that there's no tests. There's no, it's mostly a project. So we're moving towards the project-based learning, because that is, PBL allows for this interdisciplinarity. It allows for this type of product, which is authentic, because the move now is an authentic assessment. This is what we want, because no one's going to come at work and say, multiple choice, A, B, C, or D. They're going to give you the problem and you have to go solve it. This is the issue. Can they solve the problem? So the focus is on these types of skills. I think of examples like when we were in education, teacher education. The pre-service teachers have to come up with their own lesson plans. This is assessment.
Mhm.
And then they have to go into class and teach that lesson. And then after that, they have to reflect on how did my lesson go? And then you have a conversation with your supervisor. So at the end of all these processes, as Eliana said, there has to be a component of reflection, because that is the most important thing. Once they reflect, and then you can have a conversation with your professor about this, or with your peers, this is where the learning happens. Not only through the process. A lot of the learning happens afterwards, because in the middle of it, they're excited and, like too much is happening. But when it's done and you sit and you think about it, this is where you realize how much you have learned, or which areas you are still lacking in.
Thank you, Zeina. An excellent point, especially with regards to the learning happening after. At the present time, I'm working with a team on a systematic review for medical education, simulations in medical education. And I can't claim that I've been highly informed about the medical education. However, with this, I'm getting more and more informed. And it's very interesting in the medical school, the debriefing after the case, where they come, sit, reflect, and discuss, that's the biggest thing. So agreed totally, Zeina. I would like to move to Mayssa. And the question, you said that in the new program you've started, and without question, we are using AI at the present time. We have to just, let's stop talking about whether we're using it or not. Let's delve more into what and how, okay? So I'd like to take some ideas from you, Mayssa, as a student. What are some of the most helpful technologies that you have encountered or you have made use of when it comes to using AI for your projects, for your learning, like any?
So basically, and I think it's the same for almost everyone, because it's still very new. It revolutionary when ChatGPT made it all possible for all of us. But I think we're all using generative AI, whether it's in creating text and creating videos and different things. So I haven't seen anyone use more tools as students. I haven't seen the university use things that are more than that yet. But what I've seen is that one of the professors that we have is a learning and development professional in one of the big French corporations. And what they're doing now is they're using AI to train employees in the technical skills. So they've shown us a video on how it's done. What I've done in my professional life, on the other hand, for example, is one of the academies I was running needed coaching skills. So we were exploring how to equip managers with coaching skills to create this environment of back and forth within the organization and for it to create a specific type of culture. So one of the tools that I found was actually super interesting, and it combined virtual reality and AI. So what you would do is you would put a mask and then you'd have another person in front of you. You'd see another person in front of you and they would communicate with you. You would put them as if they're an employee and you're coaching them on something and you would have this interaction. So this is one of the ways that it can be used. I think it's a bit still premature in
Yeah.
universities, especially that the teachers also need to be equipped themselves. So I think it needs to start at a professor level, because what I've seen is that somehow there's also this discrepancy between what we know about AI and what the teachers know about AI. So we also need to keep up together.
An excellent point, Mayssa. Thanks for. Can you share the name of the tool that you used for the virtual or is it
I haven't.
publicly available?
I think it is. We've had one meeting with them, but we haven't worked on it. It was a demo,
Okay,
but I'll try to check my documents. If I find it, I'll share it for sure.
thank you, thank you.
Of course.
There's a whole in the old days, people when they use the term plethora, people will look at that and say, "Oh, that's an educated, conversant person." Now, if somebody uses plethora or delve, the question is whether they picked it up from a ChatGPT or personally using it. But realistically speaking, the only term I can use for the amount of tools that's out there is a plethora. It is so huge, and there's so much that we can pick from. Zeina, if I want to ask you with regards to this, what do you think is the role that AI is playing in supporting specifically interdisciplinarity and real-world settings with experiential learning? And how can it be leveraged to assess competencies beyond traditional measures? So not just how it's helping us deliver or run experiential and interdisciplinary learning, but how can we use AI to actually assess and leverage?
All right. So
we can't hear you, Zeina.
Now?
Can you hear her? Okay, my issue. Go ahead.
You can. Okay. So AI now, it's how can I say it? It's not going anywhere. We all have to use it. All the students are using it. The issue is we need to learn how to use it correctly. And like Mayssa just said, it's the professors that need the training, not the students, because the students are out there experimenting with this plethora of tools that are available. So the professors, and it's on the other side that needs the training and the learning, where the learning needs to happen. So AI, I mean, plays a transformative role, I think, in supporting these real world learning experiences and this alternative assessment that we've been talking about. It can create personalized learning pathways. It can look at each student's needs and adapt the assessment to that. It can be used for simulations, as we just heard. I mean, this is the most important, I think, probably the most valuable experience, that now we are able to create simulations and we are able to mirror or recreate complex real world scenarios that would be probably at some points impossible or difficult to recreate in a traditional classroom. You know, so using the simulators and virtual reality, we can, you know, especially I think if we're thinking about how can I say this? Sometimes it's not, I'm trying to think of where geographically in some places it's not possible to create such, or to expose the students to such situations, to such real life situations. We can use AI and these simulations and give the students an authentic experience. Now, when it comes to helping us with assessment and with evaluating our students, okay, it is very, very helpful because it can provide immediate feedback. It can provide formative feedback that would help the students to review, iterate, and improve their work. That's one way teachers can use it. It can support the project-based learning that we're talking about by managing the collaborations, by you know, setting up the tracking the workflow, tracking individual contributions, so students can use it in that way, and then they can turn in that as part of their grades. It can generate authentic problems for us to, or dilemmas. I use it a lot for coming up with dilemmas for last minute conversations at the end of class, because, you know, and that is part of my formative assessment that I use in class. It can assess the soft skills of students, like, for example, communication and teamwork through, you know, natural language processing, through behavior analysis. If we put into it the correct rubrics, it can help us do that. It can also analyze the students' work across different dimensions. It can look for patterns in student work. It can, you know, these things maybe in traditional grading, we don't do that. We don't look for the patterns, but we can ask it to look for patterns in a student's grading. It can pick up on certain weaknesses or strength that a student has, and then we may want to highlight that. So it can help with grading a lot for professors.
Thank you, Zeina. And Eliana, when it comes to alternative assessment and all the big ideas we're coming with, do you have any suggestions for particular AI tools that you've seen from your experience that can be effective and can be used in conjunction with what we are doing in alternative assessment in order to help and enhance learning outcomes rather than just replacing the tedious work while keeping our voices? Now, this is a very big, truncated question.
Said like 100 ideas, yes.
Okay, let me make it smaller. AI tools to help us with alternative assessment that we can actually make use of without taking the humanity and our voice.
Yes. So,
still a big question.
Just a small note, as you mentioned, learning outcomes, and I think at some point we might need to revisit those learning outcomes. They might not still be the same as the AI tools evolve, and we need to come up with new ideas. And there's people who are doing work on this, and I did some research, and I have a list of the new learning outcomes that, like curiosity, personalization. Like we might need to look for that. But in the meantime, like, we have our learning outcomes and we have the AI tools. A disclaimer: I don't like to tell students which AI tools to work on. I tell them to go find something that works for them. And I think this is part of their learning journey. There's this approach where I give my students all the tools that they need to use, and I tell them how to use it, and then they come apply it. My personal opinion is, go find a tool. There's a million. I do not like to advocate for one of them, because these are commercial tools and they want to sell you something. Go find something that works for you. Teach me about it, because I'm learning with you. That's an approach that might not be the best for everybody, and it's okay. Like, if that's something that works for you and your students it's a learning
Fair
journey for
enough.
them. It's going to be stressful, but at the end, they will learn. They will learn that I tried 10 tools. One of them worked for me and it's really good. I'm going to learn from them. So that's one approach. Another one that I've seen is there's the universities who are now coming up with their own AI tools. And like there's one in Australia called Cognity. There's a there's one in University of Calgary. It's from Workland School of Education. It's called Smarty. So there's these tools that academics are coming up with, and that's what I like about it. It's not commercial. It's academics. It's for academic reasons, and like the cognitive one is for feedback for academic writing. So this guy, it's behind a wall, so we cannot use it. It's for them, and I think this is one of the things that I really think we should work on is finding our own tools as universities or like checking other learning tools. One more idea is asking the students to create their own bots. And I think this is like this is the future because that student who is undergraduate or in business, in education, in medical school or anything needs a like a little assistant. And if they can manage that, it means they know their needs and they know how the technology works and they can create that. That's a very, very big answer. I can go for 2 hours. But also, like, there's small tools that I really like that are for graduate studies. So for writing, there's something called Research Rabbit that I like because
Hmm.
it's visual. It shows you like a concept map of all the papers that are connected. You can add them. It's kind of organization. So there's some stuff that help you with literature review and writing. But please keep in mind, like my experience is I use it, but then I have to put as much time to fix it and to make it my
Yes.
own. So, and this is where we want our students to be, right? We don't want them to just write a sentence and get a literature review and submit it. We want them to get to that point where this does not represent me, this is not good enough, and I need to make it better. So, I don't know if I gave you a straight answer, but the answer is we
Well,
need to just throw ourselves out there and try. Yeah.
well, Eliana, I guess anybody who claims that they have a straight answer at the present time with things that relate to AI and not just the use of AI in education, AI in general is actually fooling themselves because there's nothing straightforward about it. Even the individuals who created it and promoted it, like from the industrial and corporate and are selling, they don't know where this is going,
Yeah.
100%. You know, but from the things that were mentioned, I have a few things that came to mind, and I like how your answers are all coming together anyway. There is the part that has to do with the learning outcomes and the authentic learning and the students' expectations and whatnot. I was offering a talk, not a speak, sorry, a speech, a talk a couple of days ago, and there was a reference to we need to have our, by somebody, they referred to we need to have our assessments authentic, regardless of AI, which I fully agree with. But it struck me when that person was talking is at the present time, the most authentic assessment is an assessment that includes AI somehow, somewhere in it. Because that's the real world now. The real world is AI. And when you were talking about the learning outcomes, I guess we need to start looking at incorporating AI in at least one of our learning outcomes to say the use of the selection or the use of AI too, or even the use of AI ethically, which brings me, or responsibly, which brings me to what you mentioned about those tools for universities. At the present time, we're all trying our best to have AI help us with the assessment without breaking ethical considerations. So I know that when we are taking, so that students are not worried about this, everybody looks and says, so you're training AI with our there's that aspect. We need to be very cautious about that. I cannot make cues or put any identifier of the student in a corporate or a third party tool. And that's why, yes, the call for universities to start, and schools to start creating their own, is going to be happening as we move forward for security purposes. So it's very interesting, all of this that's happening. Any comments before about everything that we're talking, before I move to the next set of
No,
questions?
it's really interesting. Like there's a yes, I wanted to mention we are doing in my department at Athabasca University with two of my colleagues. We did something called curriculum weaving, and we reviewed all of our courses to see where AI might fit and where we need to change stuff related to AI. And then we used a framework from Florida University, where they have an AI literacy and AI fluency framework. And we went through, like, we want them to know what is AI, what does AI do. We want them to be critical choice of AI. So, and then we looked at our courses, for example, program evaluation, which I teach. How does AI interfere with that, or how does it change it, or what we want our students to know for that? And then we went in and changed it. What we tried to do is we wanted to be also a little bit futuristic. So instead of
Nice.
putting generative AI, which we know in 5 years, I don't think we will be having this conversation, we put emerging technologies, because we know that this is going to, like, now it's generative, we need to prepare this generation that is learning with us, but like later it will be maybe another type of technology. So yes, we need to look at all the courses when they do their program review. I would recommend
Yes.
that they go in and look at their, like, institutional learning outcome, the program learning outcome, the course learning outcome, and see how AI can enhance that. And like when the students go to work, what are they going to do? And try to bridge that gap to prepare our graduates to be the best they can to be successful. Yes, that's it.
Thank you. Thank you. Uh, Mayssa, I want to ask you, as like, we're talking big talk about futuristic aspects, which we are all like, anyway, I have to say, I'm so happy that I'm seeing all this evolution taking place, because honestly, when it comes to assessment and education, we've been talking about the need to change assessment from behaviorist to more student-centered for ages, since the first day I entered the classroom, which was more than 35 years ago. Okay, so that being said, there's still some concerns, not some, many concerns, many concerns. But as a graduate student yourself, and as somebody who's in the actual workforce, what are some of your concerns regarding AI in higher education, in studying, in education as a whole, and how do you see it evolving from your position and positionality as a graduate student and a professional?
I'm really gonna have the most cliche answer on this, but I think that the answer is I'm very excited about all the potential, but I worry so much
Yeah.
about, like I said earlier, losing our identity and losing ourselves to something that isn't us. Although they try to tell us that this Gen AI will learn how you speak and your tone in writing emails, for example, or in writing papers, and they're going to write similarly to you. This for me goes beyond the university or beyond the program. It will
Yeah.
affect society as a whole. Who are we? And it's very important for me, especially that I'm in a generation that was able to experience life without technology before it entering. So I have the balance and I know what it's like without a computer. I know what it's like without a phone. I know what it's
You
like
don't
without
show.
AI. I'm 30.
ما شاء الله العمر كله يا رب.
Thank you. So I've experienced this side of things, so I know how important it is to still live in real life. And I know how important it is to still have this empathy towards others. So what I worry about is losing ourselves and losing this empathy towards others and towards data, because we're in the world of data now. Everything is data, and we have a huge amount of data analysts, and we have like everyone wants to work with and make decisions that are data driven. That's amazing. But for me, what you do with this data and how you interpret this data, although any AI tool would tell you that I've seen this pattern in this student, or this student is capable of doing this, this, and that, push them towards this, push them towards that. For me, if you don't review this content, if you don't actually put in your effort and your touch, anyone else can do your job. And this is my answer when people say, are you worried about losing your job? Are you worried about the future of job? No, because what we do is very human, and this is what we need to make sure that we don't lose. So this brings me to a point where I wish that universities fasten the way that they're dealing with AI, put in some regulations, because you can't just give a child a lot of candy and let them eat all the candy. You need to
Yeah.
have it like properly structured. That's one. To inform the professors about the different things that need to be done to make sure that students are not going down that path. Because most of us are very young, we haven't experienced life without any of this. And it's so exciting. There are plenty of things for us to discover, but it can go south very easily. So those are my concerns.
Mayssa, thanks a lot. I guess your response wasn't that cliche, by the way. You
Wasn't
delved
it?
into you delved into real serious reflections, and I really appreciate that. And as you were talking, there are a few things that I'm hopeful might actually be helpful for all of us to remind ourselves. This is any new technology. Now, definitely AI is at a higher level. It's really disrupting the whole space. However,
Yeah.
I think I'm from a generation who never used the ATM other than hard money. And when the paper money came, it was like, oh my God, this is monopoly money. And when ATM came, there was this whole distrust in the electronic and ATM machines. At first, hacking was so easy. Hacking is still possible, but way harder at the present time. So many checks and balances and procedures to control. Now, with regards to the identity, it was very interesting when Eliana mentioned that she like using AI for literature reviews to help with literature reviews, but then you spend more time fixing it to make it yours. Because realistically speaking, we are human. We want our own we we not just want, we need our own agency. And I'm not sure, from those who are listening, I'm not sure how many have read something for Dostoevsky. There's the Notes from the Underground. A very, Mayssa, I think with Dostoevsky's approach, I urge people to, it's a heavy read, but it's a short read. It's not like all the Russian literature that's very long. But the argument that Dostoevsky was putting way back then is that if human beings had all the right answers, will they listen to that right answer, or will they continue doing or making the wrong choice just because it allows them to feel free and independent? And that's the argument. AI will give us answers, but after all, we would want, and humans, history has shown, we always want to have our own identity. So I'm not that worried about identity. There's a lot of people who jumped on board, but then noticed, and now we're going slowly. It'll take time. So I'm not sure. just an idea. Zaina, you have something to say?
Yes, I agree with this completely because, you know, like with everything that's new, it's so exciting. It was like so novel.
Mm,
And all of us tried it. And like Eliana said, you cannot rely on it. Like you have to rewrite everything after it, or else everything you write sounds the same as everybody else. And those of us who are researchers, we know like this is not okay. And I don't agree with this, and this is not my style. And you end up spending so much more time fixing after it. It's like someone else, you know, when if your RA writes the first draft and then you actually have wasted time and you have to rewrite it. It's the same thing, but it was so exciting to experiment with. I think I speak for myself.
yes.
I'm at a point now where I'm more cautious on how I use it, and I use it for certain specific things like planning, like brainstorming, like these types of things that it, instead of me writing it in the journal by hand, it types it by itself. I speak to it more, which was very new for me because now I use voice. So I do my planning verbally, and like small things that help with my day-to-day tasks now, I've set on those. But when it first came on scene, I was personally all over the place. It was so exciting. I found it to be, and I'm not an ed tech person, but I found it to be so exciting. And I thought that it had so much potential to help with my work. I discovered that a lot of the ways I thought it would help, it turned out not helpful. However, I was surprised by so many other ways that I hadn't thought about that it now helps me with. So it's a very valuable tool. And I think ethics is the key when it comes to kids and when it comes to high school students or university students, because again, this comes with life experience. As Miss Mayssa, our youngster, is mentioning, we come from an age where there were no cell phones. Imagine when we like this,
Uh,
like there was no email when we were born.
Zaina,
It's like,
for those who are from Lebanon and our generation,
yes,
the landline telephone didn't work properly.
exactly. So you can imagine, we witnessed all those great technological you know, there was nothing
Mm,
like when we were kids. You had to dial zero to get a number. You know, like on the rotary phone, you know, that my children saw, and they were trying to figure out how to use this. What is this? You know, so too much is happening very, very fast. So we have to, it's exciting. We need to experiment, but we have to be careful because along the way, you know, humans invented this, and nothing can replace humanity. Nothing. You know, in the end, it all has to circle back to being human. And what does that mean? And where do I rely on this non-human tool? And where's my humanity in it? So it's very exciting.
thank you, Zaina. It's so true. So much is happening, and yeah, it's. I fully agree with you. There's so much happening, and we are getting more cautious. We're learning how to use it more, and with time, this will be even more. Uh, Eliana, I want to ask about the challenges. Particularly, I want to go back to what we started off with, alternative assessment, and what are the challenges that AI is imposing or bringing at the present time, and what recommend to with particular emphasis on alternative assessment. Is it disrupting alternative assessment? Are there challenges that come with it? And what would your recommendations be, if any?
Yeah, I don't think it's disrupting alternative assessment. I think it's encouraging it because, like, I did a study on policies in universities, and what they're recommending is use alternative assessment and like use a framework to do alternative assessment. So they are, it's kind of opening the way that instructors are saying that like essays are not working, although essays were not working to start with, but like now it's like more in your face, essays are not working or exams
Definitely.
are not working. So what can we do? So they go, and then there's all these links and options of doing alternative assessment. The challenge is that it's not, the challenge is we need more support. Like the instructors, they are experts in their own fields, they're not experts in assessment. And like
Yes.
even I spend like my full time learning about alternative assessment, interviewing people about like it's my full time, and I still, there's a lot for me to learn there. So I cannot imagine somebody who they already studied something else, and they learned how to teach, that's something else. And then they learned how to teach it online. And now they need to learn how to assess it in different ways. So that's like a new approach. So that's the challenge, is the time and the resources. So like, how do we do that? How do we learn about this alternative assessment? And I always say, like, uh, learning can happen in multiple different ways. I like the person learning network. This is something I teach my students, is go online and find people who can teach you stuff. So if you are an instructor, for example, here's a little plug for myself. You can follow me on social media, and I'm always trying to post stuff. I'm like too busy learning to post, but sometimes I do. There's people who post what they do about alternative assessment, so you can learn from them. Another part is have conversations with your department or with people who think alike, because sometimes your department is not the best place, but sometimes it is. Like, if you can find one person who thinks like you, and then you can have these discussions. So that is the concern, and the challenge is, it's too much to learn. It's too much for me to learn. It's too much for anybody to learn all the time. We're learning all the time, and it's hard. So, like, for the institution to provide that space, that safe space. Okay, I can go and I ask questions, I have support, I can experiment. That's one. The second one is let your students know. I let my students know, like, I just revised a course and I put a bunch of alternative assessment. I told them, all of these are new. This is the first time that I do this. Please give me feedback. I need feedback. I need to know this is working, this is not working. My focus is on you learning. So just like come to a meeting and tell me, like, this is not it. So feedback from colleagues, feedback from students, like, it's okay not to know. This is like, don't be too hard on yourself, because I see, like, I had conversations with people who were stressing out, like, what should I do? Like, I just want to quit. It's hard. So just take it easy, find like people who share the same ideas like you, and then you can learn. It's a learning journey. And whenever you want to try something small, because if you jump in and be like, I want to change everything, that's also hard. So just try something small. So those are it's not about AI and alternative assessment. It's about alternative assessment, different approach, a different paradigm. We need support. We need to be there, like a community of people who think the same or is supportive, and it's okay to make mistakes. That's my personal.
Thank you, Eliana. I want to add to Eliana's plug-in for the alternative assessment worldwide. That's how I actually met Eliana as she was working and developing these. I really recommend everybody who's interested in alternative assessment to follow Eliana on LinkedIn, because she has vignettes from all over the world, short videos of different faculty members who have been working with alternative assessment. Each one is a short video with an example of how that professor is using. And I always plug that into my courses when I'm giving the technology integration courses. And I fully agree with you, Eliana, about we're learning together. All of us, we're learning together. And if we look back, I'm not going to mention which restaurant it is in Beirut, but when I was growing up, there was a restaurant from where we used to go and get some sandwiches. And there was a guy whose job was to roll the sandwich and hand it, okay? And I was young, graduated, the same job. I went to Saudi Arabia visiting, same job. Went back, same job. The shop closed and moved to another place. He moved with it. And I'm mentioning this because it always made me think, oh my God, how boring that person's life is, and how tough life is to force somebody to have just this job to put food on the table. And I felt always very blessed that I'm in a place where, and at a time when we have to continue learning. Because the moment we stop, you were saying, Eliana, we're learning all the time. That's actually a good thing, at least in my opinion. Yes, it's hard. It puts pressure and stress, but there's the silver lining. We're growing, we're not bored, there's something new. Life is about excitement and the heartbeat going up and down. If it's flatline, then it's bad. And I agree with you, we need to talk with each other. We need to be close with each other. And the biggest reflection I have during COVID, it wasn't our efforts at higher institutions or at schools that made things work. What made things work were the WhatsApp groups or the collections and collective work between teachers, between faculty members who were asking each other, what's working for you? What are you doing? And that was the best professional development. And here I'm going to put a plug in for Edubridges. Okay, that's why Edubridges is out there. It's a community of passionate educators, and I think together we can do a lot. We need to ask each other, we need to talk with each other. Let's not wait until there's a panel. If you have a question, throw it in that community. You'll get answers from individuals also. So there's a lot to think about, and I want the attendees, if there's any question, because now we're getting close to the question and answers point. So if anybody has any question about anything related to assessment, AI, whether higher education or school level, please put it in the QA and we'll try to answer that. But meanwhile, while that's happening, I'll ask Dr. Zeina the question. As learning becomes more interdisciplinary, more experiential, how do you think AI-driven assessment or AI in assessment can help us be more fair and adaptable with our students?
Okay, so fairness is, this is the main word here, because we know that there isn't a one size fits all when it comes to this, and we're dealing with individuals, and each one of these students has their own needs and has their own ways to learn, and so we can't just implement something that just a template of grading. However, we can use some we can use AI to help ensure fairness and adaptability. We can, for example, use a dynamic rubric. The dynamic rubric, especially when it comes to interdisciplinarity and interdisciplinary context, is very, very important. For example, we can, through a dynamic rubric, we can demonstrate how to maintain consistent standards. So, for example, the key features for a rubric would be the core standards would be 50%. And that would be 50% of the grade would come from universal skills like organization and delivery, for example. And this remains constant across all the disciplines. The second part could be the flexible components, which would be the other 50%. And these would be the discipline specific needs that, so this rubric will move depending on the discipline that we are testing. It's a consistent scale. We use, for example, all sections of the rubric would be 25-point scale, 4-level evaluation system across everything. So this will ensure consistency. It would be also each discipline would maintain a similar rigor when we focus on the field appropriate skills, and this would be parallel structure. So this is one way we can use AI to ensure fairness in our assessments. Another way, we can create assessment systems that can evaluate discipline-specific skills as well as transferable skills. So in this types of assessment, we can, for example, use a consistent structure. We can start with that. So let's say 60% of the weight of the assessment would be on the discipline-specific skills, 40% would be on the transferable skills. We use the same core transferable skills from across all the disciplines. We're looking to grade the same thing, but we customize the discipline-specific criteria. That's where we grade differently. We would provide, for example, multiple assessment methods. We can do direct observations, we can do portfolio assessments, we can do peer assessment, we can do self-assessment. Doesn't have to be traditional. It's not the test anymore, or the essay anymore, or the research paper anymore. We have to incorporate regular feedback. So weekly progress updates that AI can help with, monthly skill assessments, quarterly performance, end of semester review. Also, it helps with tracking this, because we have to track this, because what we want to see the students' growth. So we need to start with an initial baseline measurement. We have to have ongoing monitoring to get to a final comprehensive evaluation. And we can set that up in an AI system,
This
Yeah,
is amazing.
question. Yeah.
Huh? Sorry?
Like you have a question. I said, I can see the question coming.
No. Actually, it's an appreciation and a thank you with a potential response to a question posed by Hana Aridi. Dr. Eliana answered that regarding monitoring the student usage of AI. So putting that log, and I guess one of the things that we can also, besides what Eliana noted regarding submitting that log, I think also incorporating the structure of a scaffolded assignment in the original project rather than at the end, rather than as an afterthought. When we're talking about assessment, whether a research paper, like we all know, okay, the master's thesis or the dissertation, okay? How do professors really know that the student is the one who conducted this or is informed about all of this? They're doing it for years, and we know that some people have gone through other routes, but it's usually the scaffolded part. We start with the literature review and the question. They have to come and present and discuss with us. Then they go prepare the methodology, come back. So that scaffolded approach ensures that ability for checkpoints, corrections, especially when we're talking about alternative assessment that is open and wide. I don't want to leave that student doing something for a whole month and a half, come back with something that's totally off track. I need to work with them. Is this harder work for the faculty members? Yes, but from another side, we have things that are helpful. We don't have to create the scenario anymore. AI can help us.
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
but yes.
If we continue, one more thing is that AI can help us in providing multiple pathways for students to demonstrate competency.
Exactly.
This is the main thing. This is very important, because what it can do is it can ensure, like, a main key feature of this is equal rigor. We need to have the same rigor across. So all pathways must meet the same learning outcomes. So now the focus has shifted to LOs. Are we meeting those LOs in different ways? That's no longer traditional testing. Now we are, it's LO-based assessment. We need to have consistent assessment criteria, equivalent workload and depth to the work that they are doing, and the same skill demonstration requirement. We also have a big part of this, which would be the student choice. They need to have the, is it project-based learning? Is it community engagement? Is it digital multimedia creation? And this is where personal integration, personal interest comes in. This is where the learning happens. If the students are doing something that comes from what interests them, that they see value in it, which takes us back to Eliana's editathon. I like that word. Because you see it, when you see it, it makes sense, because we know, like in traditional, we used to spend hours correcting those essays, and they look at the grade, they crumple it, they throw it in the garbage, and I used to feel like crying, because it would take me like an hour to mark a paper. Now, no. Now they're creating something. And so AI can help also with the support structure for all of this. This is very important. Clear guidance. It can help with clear guidance for each pathway. It can help with regular progress monitoring. It can help with resource access, mentorship options even, because again, we go back to simulations, we go back to all kinds of things. We're not only talking about ChatGPT, we're talking AI.
Yes.
You know, it can also afford the students to have collaboration opportunities that we wouldn't have in class or in their communities or in their learning environments. So it's very, very important that it can help us, balance standardization of assessments, but with flexibility based on where we are. I
Thank
think
you,
we
Zeina.
learn how to use this. We're still in a learning phase, all of us.
It's going to be some time until we can say we know what we're doing, we're learning. All the more reason for us to actually work together with the students. Now, that doesn't mean we don't know anything about what's happening, because in education, the research has been consistently indicating the need to integrate technology, the need to offer feedback for students, the need to focus on cognitive support. We have these, but they were being given lip service. At the present time, with AI, we have to actually change and modify things because the old traditional behaviorist approach in assessment doesn't work anymore. I wanna go to Mayssa, because I want to take your opinion about this. And this is something I faced. I'm not sure how much Zeina and Eliana have faced, but on occasions, not on occasions, most of the time, when we create alternative assessment or non-traditional approaches and we give the students the options on many, like for example, a course where I gave them the opportunity to select the output most interesting to them, not a paper. I didn't want a paper. I wanted up to them, awareness campaign, video, whatever, something that talks or gives their identity about a particular topic. The issue was many felt lost because they're not used to it. And I was pushed, like, they didn't say it in so many words, but just tell me what you want and I'll do it. I want the grade. So from a student perspective, you did mention that you started off saying it all depends on the personality. And if you're coming here for a piece of paper or for learning.
Yeah.
But being where you are and seeing what you are seeing with also your colleagues, how do you think we can give this option while at the same time not having the students go, what am I going to do?
I think it all goes back to preparing the ground, just making sure that you are aligned with their expectations and they are aligned with yours. So, of course, this me wanting to learn part is we all agree on, but from a more practical way, what they have done now, as I told you in this program that I have, was they said, this is what we're going to do. You're going to use AI. And then each professor had their not learning objectives, but rather the outline of how things are gonna go. And we needed to adapt. So you just give them a tiny piece of what it is that you are expecting, because sometimes we want freedom, and then when we get the freedom, we don't know what to do with it. And
Exactly.
if you give us a little bit of base or structure and tell us that this is what I think, this is one of the ways that you could do it, but do whatever you want, soothe, maybe it would make it easier.
Thank you. Eliana, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, so one of the things that I do, I also face the same issue. One of the things that I do is I give them examples. So here are three common things that you can use, and here are examples. of other people who have applied this, so they have an idea of what to look for. And many times they do choose, for example, a traditional approach like an essay, and that's okay because this is what they know how to do, and this is how much time they have to invest in this. And it's okay. Like we have to know that our students are also learning. They're stressed. They have a lot of pressure.
Exactly.
But one time I received an email from a student who said that you gave us a lot of opportunities. I am so sorry. This was after the course. She said, I am so sorry. I didn't take that opportunity because I was stressed, but am I'm keeping this in my journal and I'm going to use this later. So it was a learning in that moment because like I know that they were busy, so didn't use it at the moment, but said she will use it later. So maybe give them the grace.
Thank you. So true. I'm looking at the other questions. I guess already have been answered. There's one last question that I'm answering, but because of typing in Arabic, I have to look, sorry. So I'll answer it verbally. Rasha's asking about some particular AI programs that can be helpful for teaching Arabic language, and those that are more positive positive for the students. My response would be that at the present time, almost all programs are supportive of Arabic language. It's not like old days where language was a problem. Most of the AI tools are supportive of Arabic language. That's number one. Number two, I would recommend that you join our platform, Edubridges, and I'm putting the link in the response. If you join, we're sharing a tool every week with an overview of what it is important for, so that you can actually take it and practice with it and see what works for you. And for the certificate of attendance, yes, all those who are in attendance will get a certificate of attendance. So I cannot tell you how insightful, informative, thought-provoking this session was for me. We're getting close to finishing up. I'd like to give the opportunity to each one of you to conclude with whatever you feel you didn't have the opportunity to address or you'd like to add. Let's go with Zeina.
Okay. So this was very a lovely way to spend the Saturday morning, to say it this way. I have really enjoyed this conversation, and especially the perspective coming from Mayssa as well, from the students' perspective, because sometimes we don't have the chance to hear that side of the conversation, and I think that is more important than our side, because the student voice, this is all that matters. It's the students and their experiences. So thank you so much for those comments. And Eliana, also thank you so much for your side of things and all the new things I discovered. I just think that this is an exciting time for education and for educators. And I think that we shouldn't be afraid to embrace AI and to embrace all these changes. And again, each one of us, as we said earlier, you just take a small part, integrate one small thing and see if it works, then do another, because unless we are a technology person, this is all new. This is like, completely different language that we are speaking. But we shouldn't shy away from it. This is like when I was telling the students, like when we first got the internet and everybody was copy pasting things, and
Yes.
everybody, and then what we learned was, no, you cannot do that because that's plagiarizing. And now everybody knows what plagiarizing is. And now we have all these copyright laws. And so this is the same. We're just in that phase at the start of this. But this is definitely still the beginning. It is exciting. We shouldn't be afraid of it. I know a lot of people are saying, no, it's, they will cheat, they will copy, it's plagiarized. People are just learning, the students and the professors, everyone is just learning how to deal with this, now. So I think we need to be a little bit, what's the word I'm looking for? Kinder to our students when they use it. Talk to them, explain why, no, you cannot do this. Not just be so strict with it, because they're learning the same way we are learning. So I think, lifelong learning, this is the thing to take away from this. This is it.
Thank you.
Oh, and Edubridges for this lovely panel this morning.
Thank you. Thank you. Eliana.
Thank you so much for this opportunity and for learning from you, Zeina and Mayssa. I want to add one item. In addition to everything valuable that Zeina said, I'm not gonna repeat it. I'm gonna say it's important for your own well-being. Don't be too hard on yourselves. I had
Yes.
like, I think a year ago or something, I had like burnout because of all this generative AI things, and I had to leave social media for like 2 months because I couldn't read about this anymore. This was like, so if you need a break, if you need to, like, it's
Yeah.
okay. Just like your well-being is important because if you're not feeling well, you won't be able to do your job well and interact with your students well and be fair to them. So that's my take on this. And thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Eliana. Mayssa, ختامه مسك. I will have an announcement once Mayssa finishes. Yes, تفضلي Mayssa.
So for me, all I want to say is I'm very grateful to have shared this conversation with you, and it was very, very insightful, and it made me feel very good to be able to share this perspective because I've experienced it in so many ways, and it makes me so proud that women like you that are professionals that have built careers are always learning, and it's very inspiring, and it just pushes me to want to learn more and be a continuous learner. So that's it for me.
Mayssa, thank you. And I have to say that seeing the new generation, I'm forever hopeful and forever an optimist. But the reason why I'm always optimistic is seeing the younger generation, their ethical standards, their commitment, their motivation. Unfortunately, sometimes they are misrepresented or misjudged, which is unfair. But seeing the younger generation is the only reason why I'm hopeful, honestly. It's not because of anything else. When you mentioned earlier on about empathy, it struck me that I always say this. Everybody was fearful about empathy with the video games. Guess what? The younger generation who grew up with video games is way more empathetic than the people who didn't grow with it. So I'm totally comfortable that the future is in good hands with people like you. Thank you, Mayssa, for joining us. My final announcement for everybody who's attending us. Once again, I really appreciate you joining us on Saturday. I know, as I said at the start, time is money. So thank you for taking time on a Saturday and joining us. I call on you to join us on the Edubridges platform to continue the discussion, to talk, to learn from each other. And I wish you the best. Keep growing and keep exploring. Thank you. Bye-bye.